Hey guys, Brown Bear here. Today I'm going to show you how to use PiTool, which is the obviously software for Pimax headsets. So if you're a new user or you're an existing user that isn't overly familiar with this, hopefully this tutorial video will help you. So let's get started. So you can see here on the PiTool screen here, we have the Pimax headset here. Controllers are grayed out, which means they're off or not paired or not on. Base station, one is illuminated, which means I currently have one. They're actually both on, but only one can see the headset, which is why it's illuminated. So this one is the only one that can see the headset. And obviously tracker I'm not using, so that's turned off. I don't own one. So guide button here, click on the guide. This brings you into obviously the Pimax guide, and you can click next accordingly. I'm not going to go into it. Room setup, just what it says on the tin, is basically for room setup, and you can do it now or later on. Reboot HMD reboots the headset itself. If you have any connection issues, or the base stations can't see it for whatever reason, it's useful. Start SteamVR we'll cover a bit later. Device pair is device pairing for new devices such as controllers. So for me, I'm using the Valve controllers, and they're really cool. And when I first set them up, I had to turn them on, and then I had to hold one of the buttons down for a number of seconds and click this button and follow the on-screen instructions, and then they pair and they show up then under controllers. Restart service restarts PiTool itself, restarts the software. And when you click on either reboot HMD or restart service, you'll get a prompt to, are you sure you want to do this, yes or no. Okay, so let's go into settings. I'm trying to cover this as quickly as possible. I don't want to make an overly long video and keep people waiting. Current version is I actually just updated this a second ago, so this is the second cut or take of this video. The first one I was having some mic issues, so this is me doing it again. So the current version I've obviously updated, but you'd click here to check version. Go check, it says your PiTool is already on the latest version, so it's fine. Close, and then obviously headset you did the same, but I'm already on the latest version of software and firmware. Language, self-explanatory. Run PiTool at Windows startup. Obviously take this box if you want it PiTool to start when Windows starts. Hide to the taskbar when you click the close button. It does what it says on the tin. When I click close, she shoots down here. Here we go. Double click to bring it back up. It's nice and handy just if you don't want to sit on the desktop all the time. Start Pimax VR Home is basically Pimax's VR Home, the home environment. My recommendation is to always untick this, and in other words leave it off, because it frees up some additional resources that would otherwise be used for Pimax, for rendering Pimax Home. And obviously this results in improved performance in a game. Turn on screensaver, recommend you always leave this on. This is basically just like a space starry scene in the headset itself when there's no game running, with the Pimax logo in the center. Moving on to HMD or head mounted display, you have two tracking modes. You've got Lighthouse and 9-axis. 9-axis is basically the headset's own internal tracking, which is basically 3 DOF or 3 degrees of freedom. So it'll detect you moving your head left and right, up and down, and that's basically it. But you're always in a fixed position, if you know what I'm saying. So this is basically what you should select if you don't have base stations. Lighthouse is what you would select if you have opted for the option of the headset with base stations. For me and anyone that has the ordered in the last 2 to 3 years, the Pimax headset shipped with the version 2.0 base stations, which do not lead line of sight to each other to be able to see each other. They actually interact with the crossover on the infrared beam. So for example, mine, I'm facing my wall, and in my studio here or office, and I have 2 base stations, one in the top corner left corner room, one in the other one in the top right hand corner of the room, and they're both obviously diagonally positioned pointing at me, and therefore their beams would obviously cross over each other, and that's how they actually identify where the other base station is. So they do not need line of sight, which is actually great, and you can actually link multiple numbers of these. I can't remember the exact number, but I'll leave a link in the description of the video as to how many and how you do it. The light color bar, obviously, sorry, on Lighthouse, if you're using base stations, this gives you a full 6 degrees of freedom. So yaw, roll, pitch, you know, zoom, all that kind of stuff. So it's a full position tracking. Light bar color obviously is the light bar on the front of the headset. You can change the color of this. So on my particular headset, you can do green, blue, or aquamarine. Display, this refers to refresh rate, as it says. So the super headsets have another option here, which is 180 hertz. Mine is not a super. So I have here 144, 120, 90, 72, and 64. Basically what this refers to is the number of times the picture is refreshed on the screen each second. Simply put, that is it. It does refer to how smooth the image is. So for me, for example, 90 hertz refers to, obviously, you know, the image is refreshed 90 times every second. But obviously there's a balance here that you need to kind of establish, and this is why, this is not the only reason, but there's many other reasons, but it's one of the reasons a lot of tuning is required with VR headsets, not just Pimax in particular. But for me, 90 hertz is a good sweet spot. The reason I use this is because it's you know, it provides a smooth image. So for example, if we were to go with 64 hertz or 72 hertz, if we were doing a flyby, you know, view on a jet in, say, for example, DCS World or Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is the content obviously I cover, you would see a lot of ghosting as the plane gets closer to you and flies past you. With 90 hertz, I get a slight bit of it, but not much at all. It's barely noticeable. And with 120 and 144 hertz, it's gone. So the image is completely smooth. So if you ever played on a 144 or 200 hertz monitor, you'll know what I'm saying. There's no ghosting, you know, when you do a fast move with the mouse or anything like that, or, you know, yeah, you're playing a fast game, there's no ghosting at all. It's just a really sharp, clear image, and that obviously is the same principle here with the headset. So obviously the higher refresh rate you go with, more performance it draws, or your resources it would draw from your system, so it does impact performance in the game. So obviously if you have a 144 hertz set and you've, you know, high settings defaulted in the game, you're going to get poor performance, or potentially poor performance. Whereas if you have the same settings and you have it set to 64 hertz, you're going to get outstanding performance, just because the headset doesn't have it, the GPU doesn't have to render as much detail or refresh that picture as many times as it would on 144 hertz. Backlight is the backlight on the actual screen itself, so obviously up to get brighter and, you know, bring it down to get darker, but I have left this as default at 50 and I haven't touched it since. IPD offset, this is the area we get a lot of questions, and I say we, I'm referring to the community, so forums, Discord, that kind of thing, my channel as well. So basically IPD offset refers to the offset of the IPD, or interpupillary distance, I believe it stands for, between your, and that is the distance between your two pupils. So for me, my interpupillary distance is 64 millimeters, but I use 66 millimeter setting on the Pimax. The reason for that is the IPD setting or adjustment tool in Pimax is on the bottom right of the headset. You've got a wheel that you can move left or right, and what that does is if you move it right, it moves the lenses further apart in the headset, and obviously moving to the left, it reduces that distance or moves the lenses closer together. Obviously to accommodate people with, you know, eyes that are different width, head shapes, all this kind of stuff. So this is something you need to play around with quite a bit to get it right, because the IPD adjustment in the Pimax headsets is not very accurate. What a lot of people have found, including me, and this is where you would, you know, compensate for that error or inaccuracy, is here in the IPD offset, or the screen vertical offset, which is so IPD offset, you were talking about left and right or horizontal, and screen vertical offset, you're talking about, you know, whether the screen is, you know, too far up or down. So play around with it. I leave mine at 0. The reason for that is my IPD is 64, but I use a 66 IPD in the headset tool itself when I'm using the scroll wheel, and that I find the images, you'll find what happens is the image becomes really clear at your right IPD. And what I recommend you do as a guide is, if you have an Android or iPhone, download an app called Glasses On, and that's a free tool. all it uses is your front camera on your phone and a credit card, or a debit card if you have one, and you hold it in front of your face or just above your eyes, and you hold the phone out in front of you as if you're taking a selfie, and it's extremely accurate, like so accurate that it gave me the exact same value of 64 IPD, or 64 millimeters IPD, which was the exact same result I got in an optician's. So that's how accurate it is. So no need to go into an optician. Save yourself a few bucks, download the Glasses On app, it's absolutely free, and off you go. And no, I'm not sponsored by them. So down here we have others, motion compensation. I've never had anything in here, I don't know why. Maybe someone can tell me. Yeah, maybe Pimax were lazy, I don't know, or maybe it's just not active yet, or it's a future feature, but I've always had none here. So moving on to restore here is obviously restores the default settings. So if you mess something up and you're not happy with it and you don't know what you had it set to, click this button. Games, this is where you would spend most of your time. So obviously for me here, brain warp, so field of view. So very obviously everyone knows Pimax headsets have a wide field of view, and they're amazing for simulation games and immersion. Large field of view is about 100, it says 200 degrees field of view on the website, but it's not, right? That's a combination of horizontal, vertical, all this stuff. In reality, you're talking about 107 degrees large field of view, right? Normal is about 140 to 150. Small is about 125, and then potato, which would be like an Oculus Rift CV1 or Rift S or G2 or Index, you're talking about 100 to 105. And with each of these field of view settings comes different performance. So obviously if you operate on potato, you're going to get amazing performance because it's rendering only a small portion of the image in the headset. Whereas if you're running large, it's really going to kill your CPU and GPU. Because it has to render such a massive image. So for me, it's normal is my sweet spot, my preference. I'm okay with a wider field of view, but I like to have some eye candy. Whereas you might be the opposite. You might like, you mightn't care about performance too much as long as it's fairly smooth and you don't mind the odd stutter, and you might be okay with a large setting, just to have all that extra eye candy. Or you could be a complete performance freak and have it on small or potato just so you can have obviously max settings, or vice versa, go back to large and have lower settings. Whatever takes your fancy, right? This is preference, individual preference, so work away. Render quality is basically the render quality of the image in the headset. So obviously 1 is the default. If you go to 1.25 or 1.5, what's the highest value? I think it's 2. Yeah, this is basically going to super sample the image twice. So it's basically going to render the image twice as good in the headset, and obviously the other way around. If you go lower, okay, it's going to take quality away, thus improving performance. And obviously, the higher you go up, the more performance is lost. Fixed foveated rendering. By the way, the default is 1. Fixed foveated rendering, or FFR, is every time you change a setting here, you need to restart, and the same is true, although I'm not sure in the latest firmware and software versions. The field of view here, changing it to large. Yeah, so going up in resolution is what I've noticed. Even though it says needs restart SteamVR, I'm on normal. If I was to change to large, it would restart the PiTool, and I would need to restart SteamVR. If I reduce the image or the field of view, so if I go from normal to small, PiTool doesn't restart, but you still need to restart SteamVR for the settings to take effect. Okay, so back to fixed foveated rendering. Close, which is off. I wish Pimax would change this to off for us English speakers, but close means off. Aggressive, and you have balanced and conservative. Okay, self-explanatory. Basically what this means is it splits the image, if you think of it, in 3 different parts. So if you draw if you picture your lens, or your view in your headset, and you draw a small circle in the middle of your vision, that part of that circle, whatever picture is in that circle, is rendered at max quality. If you have fixed foveated rendering, you can't even say the word, set it aggressive. Now this would be, so whatever's in the middle circle is max, rendered at max quality. Draw another circle around that, that would be rendered at medium quality, and draw another circle around that, that would be rendered at low quality. So in other words, sharpest quality is in the middle, and it reduces as you go out in your field of view. Okay, and what this does, and the reason Pimax put it in, is because Pimax headsets have such a wide field of view, they are performance hogs. So this was put in to enhance performance and immersion for people, to give them that bit better VR experience. So take your preference, and you know, do some testing. Compatible with parallel reprojections. This is basically what it says in the tin here, and there's a nice little example here in the picture at the bottom. So if you have two images that kind of aren't optimized for VR or superimposed, you would tick this option, and it would make them compatible with VR. So I turn it off because the games I play, such as DCS World and Microsoft Flight Simulator and iRacing, don't need parallel projections turned on. And obviously, if you have to turn this on, you do lose a little bit of performance. So it's great that a lot of the newer games don't need this now. Smart smoothing is basically it says predicting the tracking data and the picture of the headset. The refresh rate can be improved by a complementary frame. So what that means is it interpolates frames into your image or into your game, to give you that bit of a better, smoother experience. So for example, if you this only operates at 45 frames per second plus if you are running at 90 hertz. So if you're running at what's the other settings here, 120 hertz, it would operate at 60 frames per second. So the rule of thumb is whatever your refresh rate is, half that to get your frames per second value, and that's the setting at which smart smoothing is active. So that setting or more. So for me, it's running at 90 hertz. So my smart smoothing minimum is 45 frames per second. What that does is, if I'm running at 45 frames per second, it will interpolate a lot of frames to make it look like that I'm operating at 90 frames per second, thus providing you with a really, really smooth and better experience in VR. It does introduce artifacts, so it's very useful for you know, a lower spec machine, or if you are someone that loves eye candy and doesn't really care about performance too much. You know, turn up all your settings, turn on smart smoothing, and see if it gives you a bit of help. But you will need to maintain a minimum of half of your refresh rate in order for smart smoothing to be active. Moving on to hidden area mask. So hidden area mask basically means that obviously it does affect the performance of the game, but it basically means that the image that is not visible in the HMD or the headset will not be rendered. So it does improve performance. How much you're talking, it depends on the game, but for me in DCS World, you're talking maybe, you know, 2 frames per second extra if I have this option ticked. Compatible with Vive only game, needs restart. I have no idea what this means, guys. If anyone knows, I can't find anything relating to this online, so if anyone knows, please put a comment in the comments to let me know. My games, basically here, this just allows you to obviously launch games from within PiTool. That's pretty much it, very straightforward. You can import games by clicking the import button, you know, going and navigating to the game directory and double clicking on the exe. And help obviously is basically, you know, feedback and links to the forum, support, all that kind of jazz, diagnostics, logs, and then privacy is, yeah, Pimax's privacy statement. Let's go quickly and cover SteamVR. So we'll click on Start SteamVR. Now we have it up and running. So I'm running 1.16.8, which is the latest beta version, and you can opt into the latest beta version in Steam if you so wish. It basically just gives you kind of access to kind of new features that aren't publicly released yet, but they may be quirky, so beware. So here obviously it shows your HMD. If I lift mine up, it should, yeah, there we go, go active. I've moved the headsets since the start of the video, so it's only tracking by one of the base stations. Right here you have your frame time. And rule of thumb is, you can see here, rule of thumb is basically it'll show up a lot of green lines. If you want good performance in the game, keep the green line below this bar here, below this line. So basically, when you have a readout, you'll have your frame rate in milliseconds in green or amber or red. Green being great for performance, amber being okay, and red being not good. You want to lower settings if you have. If it's red, would be kind of, I think it's 20 plus milliseconds. Amber is, I think, 16 to 20, and green is anything below that. And obviously gives you your hertz setting that your headset is set to. So if you click on here, I'm not going to cover all this stuff, just the basics, because otherwise I'd need a whole week to cover SteamVR. Go into settings, and to be honest, you're not going to use half the settings anyway. In here you can see refresh rate is currently 90 Hz, so it's just picking up the default that I have set in the PiTool. The render resolution you can set to custom or auto. Custom is obviously what it says in the tin. You can set it to whatever you so choose. The white line here is basically the recommended setting for your headset according to Steam. The one thing I will mention down here, SteamVR Home. Always, for the love of God, turn this off. This greatly improves performance because SteamVR is not hogging a lot of system resources to build a virtual room. But it's a preference. Like if you use SteamVR Home, obviously turn it on. But if you want, that bit of extra oomph for a game, turn it off. For the most part, you guys will be using down here in video. So whatever general says, you can ignore it because it's superseded by whatever you have set in the video, which refers to the application or game you're running. Now, to adjust these settings, it is important to note that you need the game running before you go into per application video settings. Okay, so if we click on this here, so if I was running DCS World, I would see, let's just pick a game, so let's just pick Flight Simulator. This would show up if I was running DCS World, and it would show DCS World here. So for the purpose of this, I don't have a game running. These are just preset stuff here. So we'll select Microsoft Flight Simulator. This will be the custom resolution multiplier that I have set, and I can change that as I so wish. And this refers to the super sampling. So super sampling, Steam super sampling, or Steam SS refers to mushing extra pixels into the image to provide a better picture and more clarity. This is less CPU intensive, much less CPU intensive than, for example, the DCS World pixel density setting. So if you're having issues with DCS World and you want to, get a little bit of extra clarity or image quality, turn the DCS pixel density setting down and turn the Steam SS or super sampling setting here up. So for example, if you have the DCS World pixel density set at 0.7 and you want to get good clarity, you want a 1-to-1 ratio, so you'd want to move this up to 130% because they multiply by each other. Okay. Motion smoothing and legacy reprojection. Let's go into Firefox because I always forget what they mean. So right here, motion smoothing is currently available in SteamVR beta. Well, it's available in everything now. Basically, it means an application isn't going to make the frame rate. When an application isn't going to make the frame rate, motion smoothing kicks in. So it looks at the last 2 delivered frames, estimates motion and animation, and extrapolates a new frame. So basically what it means is when your game is maybe potentially stuttering or isn't going to make the frame rate required, it interpolates a frame. Exactly what it means. Reprojection is the other one I wanted to cover off. So yeah, legacy reprojection mode. Basically that is when it's enabled, obviously all games will render at half the frame rate, so 45 frames per second in my case instead of 90 frames per second versus my 90 Hz. Obviously, while Windows Mixed Reality for SteamVR uses motion vectors generated by the GPU to extrapolate the next frame. There you go. Alright, I always have it off, and motion smoothing is always set to use the global setting, but actually because I have it enabled in PiTool, I can change this to disabled. I don't think it's going to override the PiTool, but for the case of this, I just leave it at use global setting. And look guys, with that, I hope that was helpful. So if the content was useful, please like the video, please subscribe. You'd be helping the channel out greatly and it'd be much appreciated. Please do have a look in the description of this video for a link to my Discord. Please come and join us, say hello, and have the chat, and I'd be happy to support you directly if you do want to direct message me. And if you have any video ideas or requests, please do put them in either Discord by joining my Discord or put them in the comments box below. Thanks guys, and stay safe.